was my great pleasure today to speak to Scot McCloughan, former general manager in San Francisco and Washington, and one of the greatest talent evaluators in football. Sit back and enjoy nearly an hour of quarterback conversation. This was one of the most enjoyable interviews I've ever done.
Well, I think with these young coordinators coming in and what's happening, not just on the NFL level, but of course college and even high school nowadays. A lot of it is the spread system, which is working because you're getting more athletes on the field considered positional players, not just O linemen, big tight ends. Run the ball on first down, run the ball on second down, throw the ball on third down. Now it's completely changed where you used to run the ball to set up the pass. Now you pass the ball to set up the run, which for me, being in the league for so long, is such a different dynamic. So I'm always looking for the big, tough, strong guys up front, and that's where you start when you're doing a rebuilding process, and just be able to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Nowadays, it's like, let's go to the perimeter. Let's get the Kyle Pitts type guy where what he really is a big, receiver that's considered a tight end. But a lot of times you're flexing them out because you're going 3 and 4 receiver sets, and you're going with a one back, one running back. Back in the day, you had the fullback, on first down, you're pounding the ball between the tackles. You're going on dive plays, you're going on power plays. Now it's these, they're rolling out on first down and they're throwing the ball. And it puts a lot more pressure on the quarterback, and it puts a lot more pressure on the offensive line, and it puts more pressure on the defense. And that's why they're having success with it. But the league is very trendy. I don't know if you remember back in the day, they had the run and shoot, and all of a sudden 3 or 4 teams went to the run and shoot and realized in 3 or 4 years, we can't keep our quarterback healthy, where he's moving around too much, we're throwing the ball too much, and all of a sudden it went back to the power game. And all of a sudden now, with these RPOs and with the spread system, they're throwing the ball to score points. Everybody's like, we got to score 35 to 40, which back in the day, you scored 24, you usually won the game, because you're controlling the clock by running the ball, and you're trying to play good defense. And now the ball's out so quick, or it's all so deception from the offense, where the defense is thinking more than reacting. And that's why these young coordinators are ahead of the curve, because they grew up in that, whereas these old school guys grew up in a totally different generation. I think that's why these owners are liking these younger coordinators, because the fans love it. The points are being put on the board. They're making ESPN, fans want to go to see the game. It's like in baseball, they want to see the home run. They don't want to see the no-hitter, because they want to see flash. They want to see pizzazz. And, with a quarterback, it puts a lot of pressure on them, because, if all of a sudden, you're down 2 scores, then you have to be able to throw the ball from the pocket, because, the defense can adjust now, knowing that, that they're up 2 scores, and knowing you're not going to run the ball, so now they can send pressure, blitzes, whatever, deceptions to the offense, where if you don't have a quarterback that can sit in the pocket and throw the ball, you're gonna end up struggling. That's what happens. I think when you get to the playoffs now, is that both offense and defenses are really good. But if all of a sudden, I remember when we used to play San Fran with Colin Kaepernick when I was in Seattle, we knew if we got up 2 scores, we got them, because you made Colin have to throw the ball from the pocket. You made sure you kept him in the pocket with the ends, staying home and setting the edge and coming upfield and not rushing him really, but making him stay in the pocket and making him read the defense and make him complete the ball on good coverages. You're not knocking him, because he was a dang good player. When the score was closer, they were ahead. But we knew if we get a 2-score lead, it proved out that we definitely had a chance to win the game.
Does this mean that teams generally will have to look for a different skill set then? Is mobility, the ability to improvise, to throw off platform, are these the kind of things that teams are looking for now? And I suppose a secondary question to that, Scott, is what is the chances that it will change again, that the league will adapt within maybe the next 5 years, and all of a sudden you have to look for an even newer skill set or somebody who is different?
Yeah, I think definitely right now the status quo is, in looking at the past couple of drafts, you need a quarterback that's mobile, because like I said, you're not going max protections. You're not, a lot of times, if you need to, if it's third and long, you're keeping the back end to help you out, or bringing the tight end down to chip. But you're going with the 3 or 4 receiver sets now. You're taking pass blockers off the field to have receivers who are more, perimeter guys on the field who are not blocking, who are not getting paid to block. And so the quarterback get more pressure, especially on second and third and long, because defenses are blitzing, they're stunting, they're doing, games up front to get pressure on the quarterback. And a lot of that comes from, with the stunts, comes from the middle, which you want to do. You want to push the pocket from the middle to get the quarterback outside on the perimeter. So a lot comes into mobility, ability to adjust to the pass rush, which is, I think, some of that's natural instinct, just feeling guys. That's why, like, a Ben Roethlisberger could have success. Tom Brady has success. They're not the best foot athletes. They're not the quickest. They're not the fastest, of course, but they have that instinct, know when to slide left, step up, slide right, or they can feel it come from the backside. And a lot of these guys can't do it, but they adjust from that because of the foot quickness, because of the early speed. They can get outside the pocket and give himself another 2 or 3 seconds to make a play down the field, or run for the first down, or run for 5 to 8 yards or whatever. I personally think it's going to change, and it's going to change sooner than later, because right now, when it's all said and done, you have a great GM, you have a great head coach, you have a great college staff, pro staff, scouting wise and doing all the right things. But when you start going 3 or 4 receiver sets and one running back set, that these quarterbacks are going to start getting hurt. And the owners want the flash because that's what sells tickets. And I get it, totally get it. But also, you need the quarterback on the field to show the flash. And the more hits they take, which they are, if you look at the numbers over the last, 5 to 7 years, quarterbacks, not so much sacks that you see all the time. Well, Aaron or Russell Wilson, he's been sacked this many times, the last 8 years. You're like, wow. But I mean, and that's good to know, because it's putting more hits on the quarterback. But what they don't keep track of is knockdowns, and there might be only 4 sacks in the game, 5 sacks in the game, but there might be 12 to 13 knockdowns. And those are the same thing as sacks. I mean, that's still contact being made to your body physically. And that's changed since the so-called spread systems came in the NFL. And I think you're going to find out these superstars that, these young guys, as you look at, Burrow, how many times he's been sacked is incredible, but how many hits he's taken has been incredible. And he has had an ACL because of it. How long is that going to last physically? Because, as you get older, there's not these Tom Brady's. I mean, he's a unicorn, meaning that he just plays, and finds a way to stay healthy. But I think these young quarterbacks are going to start realizing, son of a gun, he is our franchise guy. We win and lose because of him. Majority of the games, we can't let him keep getting hit. We need to max protect, because he's been in the league now 5 to 8 years. And if this keeps going on with his hits, he's not going to last but 2 or 3 more years, on the average, because of the hits to the body. So I think teams will come back and realize that, we know, Herbert, we know Burrow, we know guys like that. There are, hopefully 2nd, 3rd, maybe 4th contract guys are going to be with us for 10, 12, hopefully 15 years and give you a chance to win. But he's got to be on the field to do that. He's got to be upright to do that. So I think teams will still keep some of the spread in there, but they're going to find ways to have more protection for a quarterback so they do not take as many hits. Because these guys on defense are getting bigger, stronger, and faster, and they get paid too to make plays. And they're told before the games, hit him hard as much as you can. Not a cheap shot, and don't go low and all that stuff, but knock him around, make him think about it, and they do. And that's what they get paid to do. And they're unique athletes just as well as the offense and the quarterback. They're all phenomenal athletes, and they all get paid to do a job, and they do it to the highest of the ability. That's why they're in the NFL. And, you get the quarterback out of the game in a legal manner. That's huge. I mean, you might have a 25% chance of winning, goes up to 50% chance of winning because number 2's back in the game. Number 2's seldom are like number 1. So I think it'll go back. I think it will. I think the spread will stay somewhat because it does score points, and it does the college system and the high school system to the college, and the college to the NFL is developing more of those guys to be perimeter guys, the Kyle Pitts, guys like that. Now he's unique because he's so big and fast and talented athletically and with ball skills. But guys like that are out there, the Wallers, with the Vegas team, those guys are mismatches because they're so tall and athletic, and you got a safety or a linebacker on them. It's usually a mismatch. But again, your quarterback's taking twice as many shots as he should.
How would you define it factor within a quarterback? And I've also heard the phrase tilt the field. What, in your view, does a quarterback tilting the field mean? And does that phrase also include how a player leads the team off the field too, their personalities and how they just approach every day?
It's a very unique position. Now, all of them are hard to really figure out, but the quarterback is very unique because I personally believe 50% of it's physical skills, and that's God-given skills. That's from, athleticism. That's from, just natural instincts for the position, being able to make plays on the fly. So I think 50% of it is physical skills. I think the other 50% is mental skills. And that's meaning not just toughness and internal fortitude, in been in big games and won big games. It's just a fact of you're a consistent guy day in and day out, where you go into the huddle. It's the fourth quarter. Say you're down, 6. Say you're down 9 or whatever. You 1 score, 2 scores, and I've been around the quarterbacks to walk in the huddle, and the 10 guys in the huddle with them totally believe that they're going to win the game because they have confidence in this guy because they can see it in him, in his eyes, and the way he calls the play. They've been around him enough in practice in the off season where it's not like so much a toughness issue. It's just the fact that they've been there and done it. And I've been lucky to be around like a Brett Favre, a Russell Wilson, and see it. And it's just like, wow, even as an outsider, really, but inside, but just watching it, you feel like, you know what, we're going to win this game because we got this guy calling the plays. We got this guy, running the play, and he's going to find a way to make the right play. There's been many really good quarterbacks that have success in college and match the physical skills you're all looking for. 6'2", 6'4", big hand guy, big arm, strong arm, powerful arm. Get to the NFL and don't pan out because it's such a different animal when you get to the league. And like I said, there's these other guys that are getting paid to make the plays on defense. And it's the guys that they don't panic. There's patience in the pocket, and they've been there and done it. And a lot of that is experience, but a lot of it too is just their mental makeup, how they were, developed as a younger person, a younger player, where nothing's too big for them. And once you get that confidence in the offense, in the quarterback, then these guys want to make a play and know they're going to make a play because the quarterback's going to put them in a situation to make the play. And I think it's very, very, very hard to identify. I mean, you can interview the kid, 3-4 times, have dinner with them, meet with the family, meet with coaches, meet with teammates that he's played with in college and all that. And you think you know him, but do you really know him you can see the tape on college and be like, dang, he's a good player. Okay, I understand why he's going in the first round because he put up these numbers, he matches the measurables you look for. He's had tons of wins over losses. He gets nothing but an A report card from the coaches, from the teammates. And they get to the league, and all of a sudden they get put in a pressure situation, and now the media is after him. Why is he? Ryan Leaf's a perfect example. Came out of Washington State. Was either going to be the first pick or the second pick. And all of a sudden, Peyton went 1 and Leaf went 2. And the thing about Leaf that people realized when that happened was he grew up in a small town. You went to a small town for college, in Pullman, and all of a sudden got to the league as a number 2 pick, which is a lot of pressure put on a guy. He couldn't handle it. He never had anybody challenge him from the standpoint of not being the best player on the field. And all of a sudden gets to San Diego and he's struggling, which a lot of quarterbacks do early. And he couldn't handle it. And he just mentally imploded and was never the same guy again. Where Peyton, grew up in the family, had the bloodlines, went to Knoxville in the SEC, big time games, week in and week out, best competition, conference wise in college football, and had adversity, was beat up, understood mentally and physically that he needs to do everything right to get it. Where Leaf went to Washington State and he could be 50% of what he really was and still have success because not knocking at the time the Pac-10, but it's different players he's going against week in and week out. And little things like that play into the portfolio. And you have to look at that stuff because a lot of people just want to see the numbers, and all of a sudden say, goes to the combine and he does everything perfect and the interviews are great and he's smart and he on the board, he can X and O, understand defenses, cover 1, cover 3, cover 5, whatever. But they get put in that situation where they have adversity, and it's not just for 1 week, it might be 3 weeks in a row. The good ones can handle it. I'm worried about Baker right now, Mayfield, what he's going through. Does he come out on the good side? Was he adversity? Or does he go to be like a Ryan Leaf where all of a sudden he's just talking through the media, trying to protect himself by trying to verbally prove what he is, where the good ones don't verbally have to do that. They just step up and say, okay, if I'm the Cleveland or they trade me or whatever, wherever I go, it's on me. I don't need to talk it. I need to show it. And that's what the good quarterbacks will do, when they're young. Like I said, they haven't been through this process. They haven't been, they have 3 or 4 reporters follow him during the college season and whatever, might say some bad things about him here and there or whatever, but not much. You get to the NFL, I mean, it's hundreds of reporters after you. And they live off negativity. And if they can find a little hole to get into you and affect you mentally, they're going to try it because that's what they get paid to do. And the good quarterbacks say, screw you, that's fine. You can match me all you want. I know my ability and I know I'm a damn good player. And I'm going to be a damn good player. I don't care where I go. If I'm here, if I'm there, it doesn't matter. Good team, bad team. I'm going to prove that I'm a success. And again, that's so hard to find because you think you can, and I always said this, the league, if you know 75% of the player you think before you draft them, bring them in your building, and you hit on that, then you're 50% ahead of half the teams in the NFL, because a lot of them just go off of the combine numbers, measurables, 40s, vertical. Look at the kind of athlete he is. The interviews were great, but when you dig in and really challenge a guy, how's he respond? And that's so hard to do. And that's why that's why there's so many mistakes made on quarterbacks, because you push them up the board because of the importance of the position, but all of a sudden you're forcing them in a situation where they can't be successful because all of a sudden they can't handle it mentally. So the physical skills go out the door if you can't go on the field and get the play call, get to the line of scrimmage before the clock runs down, read a defense, adjust to an audible on the defensive side. So many things happen in those 15 to 20 seconds where if a guy's thinking instead of reacting, then all of a sudden you're losing at any position, especially quarterback, you're losing his most ability to be successful. Because now he's like, oh, shoot, they're in cover 2. I haven't seen this on tape yet. And these defensive coordinators nowadays are adjusting to these offenses. They're geniuses too. They live, half of it against personnel and talent on the field. The other half is deception. Going from cover 2 to cover 4, or going from man off to man press. The quarterback's got to adjust like that. And a lot of times the players won't adjust because they're not as skilled mentally as a quarterback is. But the quarterback can still make the play because he knows, he's seen this on tape, this cover 1. This guy's going to press, he's going to bail right away, where the receiver should know it, but might not know. But the quarterback can adjust on the fly and be able to do it. And guys that can't mentally handle as all of a sudden the game's not going right, they're in the third quarter and they're down 14 points, you kind of see them fade away. But the good ones adjust during the game. And coaching's huge too, don't get me wrong, putting the quarterback in a situation to be successful, but they don't make the calls at the line of scrimmage. They don't make the throw. They don't adjust to run from a pass or whatever, what they're reading on defense. So there's so much that goes on, and that's why there's so many mistakes made. And guys like this year in the draft are going to go, and 3 guys probably go in the first round. All 3 should honestly be third-round picks. If it's a regular position, they would be third-round picks, saying that they'll come in and be a backup early, have the chance to be a starter, hopefully year 1, but not year 2 and on. But with these quarterbacks, especially, when they get drafted, not this year, but like last year, they go earlier than they should. But these teams that are picking them early are teams that aren't good overall, because that's why they're picking so early in the draft. And the run game is huge for a quarterback. The receiving core is huge for a quarterback, but the O-line's huge. And if you have the first pick, the third pick, the 5th pick in the draft, and that's because of your record, not because of a trade, it means you're not a very good team. So you're bringing in a young guy and hoping he can turn it around. Well, he can't turn it around by himself. He can start, kind of going that way like Justin Herbert did and show success, but he's had 2 great years and hasn't been in the playoffs 2 years. And if he's on a really polished team, which the Chargers are getting there now, he's in the playoffs hands down both years. From the quarterback position, he just didn't have the personnel around him. But that's what happens, and that's why people talk about rebuilding or just reloading. I don't get it, because you're always trying to get good football players and win games. But the quarterback, you feel bad for him because they call him a bust. He's taken in the first round. He's a bust because he's not going to the Pro Bowl. He's not going to playoffs every year. Well, if he was taken where he really should have gone, 3rd round, it's a hell of a pick, because he came in as a number 2, became a starter the next year, and is playing solid football, and getting better and better. And there's not a lot of pressure on him because he's not the 5th pick in the draft where everybody's like, he's got to take us to the promised land. The fans get, they want everything right now. And that doesn't happen, and once the quarterbacks start pressing instead of just playing their game, that's when mistakes happen. That's what happened with Baker last year. I know he was nicked, had the injuries and all that, but he's trying to make plays that aren't there just because he wants to prove that he's the guy, because he's the first pick overall. And that's when things go south. That's when you really start worrying about, and that's when you try to reel him in and say, Just do what you can do. Let the 10 guys around you help you. Let the defense get turnovers. Let the special teams block a punt or score on a punt return to make it better for us. Don't try to make every play a hero play. And a lot of these kids mentally, they're just trying to be who they're not and try to make the play that's not there because they want to prove that they're that pick. And that's dangerous. And it shows out many times over each season where guys are just, dang, he looked like he was on the rise. Now he's on the fall, and well, he's hurt. Okay, I get it. And then that plays into it. But still, you just got the good players will just keep even keel and say, this is who I am and what I am. And I know I can't make all the plays, and I know I need people around me to have success to make sure this team wins. And it's not all on my shoulders. And that's what the good ones do. Now, they make the phenomenal play, but they all can at certain points. But you just need help around you. And that's why the draft's so important. That's why free agency is so important, but you got to understand, the quarterback's the quarterback. And I understand people think it's the most important position on the field. I personally look at it as one of 11, and everybody says, well, you take a tackle early. It didn't matter to me. I'll take a center early. I'll take a guard early. If that's making your team better and you're getting your best 11 on the field, because that's going to help the quarterback have success.
And is that a fair description then of the upcoming draft class? Because it certainly looks like it's incredibly deep at a number of positions. Would you say that it's a better draft to sort of try and build up your team rather than drafting that quarterback early specifically for this year because of the strength at other positions?
I totally agree. And the thing that's unique about this year, and I think you're starting to see teams try to get in line to do it before the draft this year, is it's loaded in the second, third, and fourth rounds, meaning there's not the superstar player. Now, there's a couple, don't get me wrong. And there's a quarterback out of this bunch that's going to end up being a good NFL quarterback when his career's said. There'll be a good one out of this. There always is. Which one that is, no one knows right now, and they're trying to figure it out. But the depth is not the superstar, but the good players that are in the second, third, and fourth round that I feel could come in year one, and if not start, can definitely get on the field at some point in certain schemes and certain down and distance or whatever, but have a chance to be second-year starters from the get-go. I mean, you feel really good about it. And guys that get second contracts, meaning after the fourth year, you're going to extend them after the third year, hopefully. But there's a lot of not great players, but a lot of good football players in this draft. And that's why if you get stock up on second, third, and fourth, which I think you'll see on draft day, teams are trying to trade out of their spot and move back so they can pick up third, fourth, fifth round picks, because that's where the strength of the draft this year is.
Just to go back to the quarterbacks quickly, I mean, how do you balance out upside versus a need for development with quarterbacks? Because I was writing about this recently, Scott. Patrick Mahomes had 25 interceptions in his final 2 years at Texas Tech, yet when he gets to Kansas City, he only has 37 interceptions in 5 years, and many of them came in a very challenging period in the last season. And then you look at Josh Allen, who had an incredible physical profile, practically every tool that you could want, but only had 1,800 passing yards in his final year at Wyoming. It's taken him some time to reach this level at Buffalo, but we're talking about two elite players now. What is the decision-making process like to balance out potential for brilliance and maybe considering issues that could prevent a player from reaching great heights?
Well, a lot of it, from my personal standpoint, is I feel comfortable with me identifying good football players in any position, even quarterback, and identifying the certain traits I look for. Of course, physically, that's easy to figure out. You and I can sit and watch a game and not talk about it at all until the game's over. And you could tell me who you thought the best receiver was, who was a better quarterback, who was a better running back, because that's physical skills you can see on one game. When you start doing multiple games and really multiple games, even going back to their junior, sophomore years or whatever, that's when it's very, very important to, especially if you have an offensive-minded head coach, which I was lucky when I first started. I had Mike Holmgren, who was excellent with quarterbacks. Excellent. Because if you had a pushover, a not real aggressive head coach when Brett Favre was young in his career, he could have gone south quick. Because, I remember my first year with Green Bay, Holmgren set him down the second half of the last game of the season so he wouldn't set the interception record for the NFL. He didn't want him to have that on his plate. So he just set him down. So you're not playing the second half. When we were a pretty good team, we were already in the playoffs, but he didn't want to put that on his shoulders because he knew Brett mentally that would bother him because he's such a competitive, but such an aggressive guy, he's going to make the throws he thinks he has to make. And sometimes they're ugly, and he'll come back and make the same throw the next series, and it's a touchdown, for the Packers, So I think that when that comes into play is you have a head coach that's offensively minded. You have a coordinator and a quarterback coach who you can sit with, which I had with McCarthy and Norv Turner my first 2 years with the 49ers. They were excellent diagramming what that quarterback is doing, what he's looking at the line of scrimmage, what he's reading defensively, and how he's adjusting, which I can't do. I'm not an X and O's guy. I'm just pure talent guy. And they'd tell me if he made the wrong read there. I said, well, why do you say that? Well, watch this. They adjust from cover 2 to the man press. He didn't adjust to it. He didn't audible the play out. So they ran the same play that the defense wanted to run once they adjusted on the defensive side. And they said that's correctable, but that's not overnight correctable. That's a season type work. There's going to be games where he plays really well. I'll never forget, we took Alex Smith my first year, 05, and he was 20 years old. He came from Urban Meyer, Utah, spread system, never called a play in the huddle, got all the plays looking at the sideline. They had audible the play into him, then the players would see the play, and then he never audible, never called play. And I remember McCarthy telling me, he said, first of all, I'm with you with the pick. Everything matches up physically, mentally, upside, everything matches up. But he's not going to see the field the first year. He cannot see the field the first year. When he comes in here, we draft him. I'm going to start day one. I got to teach him how to call a play in a huddle. So I'll never forget the first day out there, he gave to Alex, and Alex walked up to the huddle and called it. And McCarthy screamed at him first play. He says, you gotta be loud. This is 70,000 people. You're on the road. I mean, they got to be able to hear you. And Alex is like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. Where do I stand in the huddle? So elementary from the outside looking in, but there's so many things that go into it that, upside's great. The intelligence is great. Arm strength's great. Size is great. Everything's great. But can they adjust, especially if you're going to play a guy, like I said, the first year? If you're playing a guy the first year, it means you're a bad team because you don't have a starter in place that can do it, or you got somebody that retired like a Ben, that it's just, you can't just pick up where you left off. You got to go down to the bottom. And the thing that really hurt Alex was, first of all, really young to the position and understanding pro style and all that, is the fact that we lost McCarthy after the first year. He went to Green Bay as the head coach. We lost Norb after the second year as both offense coordinators. He went to the Chargers as a head coach. So now you don't plan for that kind of stuff. So now that's more pressure on the quarterback because the young guy's getting a different voice in his ear. And it might be the same system, but it's still, they're calling different plays on different down and distance. You got a different guy talking to you in the earpiece that, might be a little more aggressive or more excitable on a sideline on third down, where you don't want to get the quarterback to feel that, so little things like that play into it. And, there's always going to be good quarterbacks. Like I said, there'll be a good one comes out of this draft, and they're going to start off early and say, if all three guys say go in the first round, they're all bust going into year 2, year 3, because they're not playing well or they're not playing at all. But it's not the quarterback's fault. It's the organization's fault for putting them in a situation that you force the issue where you could have taken a dang good defensive lineman or a corner, or a running back or a wide receiver or a safety, whatever, that is going to come in and help you year one, but it's not the quarterback. He's not touching the ball every snap, So there's so many dynamics go into it, and that's why there's so many mistakes made. It's not from identifying the talent, because it's there. It's the it factor, like you said, the mental, the internal fortitude, the toughness, the leadership, the belief that you're going to have the confidence and the confidence of players around you to have success. And when you're not winning games, that's hard to build, and I saw it in Green Bay. It went from an average team to a good team to a great team. I saw it in Seattle, an average team to a good team to a great team, because of the quarterback, and not just him making plays, but what he brought to the other guys on the field, the belief that they can be better than they are, and all of a sudden you get that rolling. It doesn't mean you're going to win a Super Bowl every year. You're going to be in a Super Bowl every year, but you're going to be in the playoffs, or definitely have a good shot at being in the playoffs if you stay healthy across the board. But everybody gets the confidence that we're going to win this game. I don't care who it is. We're on the road. It doesn't matter. We got him, and him makes me better because I want to make a play for him, because otherwise he can start going the other direction, So it's like a snowball effect. It keeps getting better and better and better, going or bigger and bigger. And people want to make the play, want to be third and 8, get the ball to me. I'm going to make the play for you, prove to you that I'm going to be like you. We can win this game. And it's huge. And once you see it, it's awesome. But you also see it. I've been on the other side where you don't have that, and it's like, son of a gun, it'd be really nice if, he'd make a play here or there so we get some confidence going. And all of a sudden he doesn't. So everybody's kind of looking around like, is he really the guy that's going to get us to the promised land? Or is he just a guy that's really talented, but can't come through in the clutch? So it's that's why the draft's so cool. And that's why it's called an exact science, because it is, especially at the quarterback position. But if somebody could identify, 75% of the kid coming out with his physical skills and his mental skills and his instincts and natural ability for the position, you're going to be very, very successful. And it doesn't happen. And we got the best of the best coaching them, best of the best scouting them, and there's still mistakes made every single year. And it's like, wow, didn't you see that? From me going like, didn't you see that coming? Where the other guy's saying, well, I saw this and this and this. And I said, oh, I saw that too. But did he have this? Did he have that? And all of a sudden it pans out that he didn't, because you thought he did, but you didn't know him well enough. And I made mistakes, not at quarterback so much, but with players in the first round, because I didn't know him well enough. The great pick from the standpoint, ESPN, Mel Kiper, McShay, whatever, saying that's a great pick because he's an interior D lineman. He's got size. He's got good college tape. His position hard to find. Yet I get to the guy, and I'll never forget the one guy I took. I won't say his name, but he flew in to do the press conference after we took him in the first round. And that next morning we picked him up, me and the head coach, Mike Nolan, took him to breakfast, and he was eating his breakfast, his pancakes with his fingers. He didn't know how to use silverware. Little things like that. And all of a sudden I'm looking at him and he's sweating profusely. We had to give him a new shirt before the press conference because he drenched through it. And it's just like, wow, this guy is not ready for the big time at all. And I didn't know that. See, because he was a good player on tape. He played a lot of snaps. He played hard. He never took a play off, anything like that. But all of a sudden he got to the league and got into this pressure situation. And it was just like, it's going to take him a year just to be able to adjust, with his mindset. Because you can't go, to a team meal and be eating stuff with your fingers, but he didn't know any better. That's how he was raised, came from nothing and all that. He didn't pan out because it was a pretty good team at the time. And we had some really tough, big leaders on the defensive side of the ball, especially the D line, and they ate him up, started making fun of him, and all that stuff. And he couldn't handle it. And he just went into his own little shell, and he was never the player he could have been. And to this day, Frank Gore tells me, he says, if they would have handled him differently that first year and second year, he would have been a hell of a player. But they didn't. And they challenged him every day, and he couldn't respond. And he didn't pan out. He bounced around to 3 or 4 different teams, probably was in the league 8 years, but was always just a guy. Just because he could not adjust to college. You're taken care of, you're on scholarship, you're patted on the butt. NFL, you're yelled at and you're benched. Some guys just can't handle it. They're like, what am I going to do? I'm embarrassing to my family. I'm embarrassing to myself. And they never take the next step, being good to great, great to special, because they don't have it mentally. And that's, you see it every year, and that's the draft. And that's why you see, all of a sudden you see a 5th rounder, a 7th rounder that, all of a sudden takes off. And they're like, well, what was the difference? Well, he had it in him that, first of all, he had a chip on his shoulder because he was taken later in the draft. And second of all, he had the ability to take the next step, understand the coach and understand the scheme, and react instead of think. Because they're the best athletes in the world. But if you're thinking instead of reacting, you're just an average athlete on the NFL level. If you're thinking instead of reacting, if you're reacting instead of thinking, you're a step faster. Say you're a linebacker, you're a step closer to making the play. Where if all of a sudden you freeze a second because you see, misdirection in the backfield, then all of a sudden that guy's beyond you. And that's just, some guys have it, some guys don't have it. And that's what I'm saying. It's so important to know the person, much more important than just knowing the physical skills, because they have it. But it's just, who's the guys can go from good to great, great to special. And that's the little it factor, that they're built up or wound so tight inside that they have to be great. And they know what they have to do in the offseason. They know how they have to sleep. They know what they have to eat. They know day in and day out, someone's going to take their job. And those guys are the ones that make the next step. And it's cool to see when it happens. But you see it the other direction, like I told you with that D lineman, it's a crying shame because he just couldn't make that next step. And that's any position, and that's even kickers and punters, snappers. That's anything. It's such a pressure cooker. Once you college, you're the best, or you're one of the best, and the coaches love you and they always say good things about you and respect your game and applaud your game. You get to the NFL, it's do or die, and not just for the player but for the coaches. Because as you're well aware nowadays, you get 3 years as a head coach. That's kind of unique when you're a new coach. And it's and these players have to produce, and they're put in a lot high pressure situations, and some guys thrive and some guys just fade away.
A final question for you, Scott. Is there a pressure as a decision maker in selecting a quarterback? Because often decision makers, perhaps unfairly, get judged on this position more than any other. And sometimes you're judged on the player you don't take rather than the one that you do.
I think once you get to the point where you're comfortable, because with me, it was always a group effort. I always gave my scouts the respect of them being on the road during the fall, which is tough. And you have good days and bad days when you're evaluating talent. You know, you might go a week without seeing a good player, then you see a good player and you put them way too high because you're like, wow, this is finally a good football player. But once you get to the pick, you've already done all your homework that you possibly think you can do, as much as you can know the guy. The owner's on board, the head coach is on board, the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, defensive staff, offensive staff, whatever side of the ball it is, they're all on board. They're all excited. So everybody's taking ownership for that pick. Because I've had it where I've done it where it's not ownership, and it's uphill battle. So once you get everybody on board, once you make the pick, you feel very comfortable. You know, like with Alex Smith, we felt very comfortable knowing he was not going to play the first year. He's just going to learn how to play quarterback in a pro style offense. Well, of course, he had to play because our line was so bad. We lost 3 quarterbacks, so he had to go on the field, and it was a disaster for him. And then changing coordinators, 5 coordinators in 5 years was a disaster. But once you make the pick and everybody's on board, you feel comfortable with it. And the owner understands, like, say this year, say you take one at 12 to 15, you know, say it's Pickett. You feel comfortable with him playing with Whipple, who was his offensive coordinator at Pitt. Very, very good NFL background as a quarterback coach. In pro style, and teaching them pro style, and teaching them how to watch tape and what to look for at defenses and all that. So you feel comfortable with him coming in, being able to step on an NFL football field and function, from calling a play, seeing the game clock, seeing the defense, and making an audible. You feel comfortable there. But does he have the physical skills to really be special, to be good? I think what you see now with him being older, of course, he can be 24 his rookie year and playing a lot of college football. Everybody's saying he's the game ready guy now. But say, like with a Willis, he's not game ready now, but he has upside. So, you know, with him, it's going to be a process. It might be a year or 2 before you get to him. But as long as the owner understands that, and the coaches understand that, and the scouts understand, the GM understands that you have a schedule, especially for a quarterback. Other positions, you could plug them in and say, hey, just don't care about what defense is called, whatever. You're covering this guy. Okay, wherever he goes, you follow him. Or, you know, third downs, don't worry about technique. I want you to get to the quarterback. Whatever you have to do to get to quarterback. But at a quarterback, you have to see so many things and mentally adjust to so many things that it takes guys longer because of the coming out of college and depending where they played at and the level they played at and all that and the coaching they got, it's all different. You need everybody on board. So when the pick's made, you feel comfortable with it because you have a schedule in place, you got a plan in place. How are you going to use them this first year, second year, third year? And as long as everybody's on board, that's great. But then all of a sudden you lose 4 in a row and you have a little bit of nicked up veteran quarterback who's starting. You're looking around saying, well, the owner's like, well, we drafted him in the first round. Let's get him on the field, see what he has. That could be devastating, like a Ryan Leaf, just devastating because all of a sudden they can't do it and they lose confidence. And once they lose confidence, the perfect example, I signed David Carr late in his career when I was in San Fran. He was the first overall pick by Houston that year, number 1 franchise, number 1 pick, all that. He even told me, he says, after my second year, he says, I was half the quarterback I was in college because I was thinking and worrying more than reacting and feeling confident about the play call. He says, I was more thinking before the ball was even snapped, which way I was going to sprint out. Instead of dropping back 3, 5, 7 step drop and making the throw. He says, I was worried about, I got hit so many times and sacked so many times. I was just defending my life. So before the ball was snapped, I'm rolling out right or left, and the play doesn't call for that. Play calls for drop back. But he says, I lost all my confidence because I was just getting beat up so bad. And I never got it back. And that's a smart guy, tough enough, all that stuff, and was a dang good college player and had a chance to be a dang good NFL quarterback like his brother is if he went to the right system at the right pick. If all of a sudden he's a late one, you're going to a better team that probably has a veteran quarterback in tow. So you can sit, like Aaron Rodgers did behind Brett Favre. You can sit 2.5, 3.5 years and just the game slows down. You see it, and then you can pick you can pick Brett's mind, which Aaron did. What'd you see? Why'd you make that throw? Okay, what happened here, here, and here? And they're just not throwing in the cooker and saying, okay, it's on you. You're a first round pick. You have to go do it. And all of a sudden they're like, well, shit, I haven't done it yet. I did in college, but this is totally different. So I mean, it's such a unique position, and it's such a unique skill set. And physically, a lot of guys have it. It's just the mental aspect. It's the toughness. It's the confidence. It's the leadership that everybody's buying into. And these owners nowadays, and it changes. It's changing in this year with the Broncos, new ownership. A lot of these they're not real football people. They're kind of like fantasy football people, where they love free agency signing the big name because it's going to sell tickets, it's going to sell hats, it's going to sell shirts. Whereas the coach and the GM are football guys, and they understand what it takes. And sometimes you're forced to play the quarterback because the owner comes in and says, listen, we took him in the first, but we had a plan in place. He said, forget the plan. I'm the owner. I want him to play. So all of a sudden you have to play him, unless you want to get fired, and all of a sudden he's not ready. You got a chance to really hurt this kid. I don't care. He's our first round pick. The fans want to see him. I want to see him. It's like, okay. And all of a sudden it goes south, and it's just like, wow, then you're fired anyway, a year or two later, and still haven't solved the problem at quarterback. So I mean, it takes luck too. And I mean, with any position you're taking guys, it takes luck. Because like I said, 100% know them. You think you know them 75%, you're kidding yourself. And you can do all the homework you want until you get them in the fire, which is on the field in an NFL game, in a big game, in a pressure situation. How do they respond? Do they fold and think less of themselves, or do they make a bad play and say, Brett Favre style, screw it, I know that play's there, I'm going to do it again, and all of a sudden the players see that and they're like, well, shit, he's got some balls, man. Let's go with this guy. I'm following this guy because this guy is important to him and he has a chance to make us win. The more we win, the more money we get.
Can I just one final bonus question? I mean, as when I'm looking at a player with an amateur eye, so for example, the Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral, and I can see, things that are positive. He's got a decent arm for his size. He can move around quite well. But then I'm also looking at the offense. There's pop passes. It's a lot of RPOs. He puts his shoulder down and runs into defenders, and you're thinking, well, please don't try that at the next level. How do you sort of balance all of those things out? How does sort of a pro expert decision maker balance out the toughness, the physical talent, the moxie versus this is an offense that maybe doesn't entirely, obviously the NFL is using some of these ways and means on offense now, but sure, it's not necessarily going to entirely translate straight away.
Correct, 100%, because I respect him from the standpoint of, first of all, Lane being his head coach, which is a pain in the ass, just so you know. I mean, he throws so much at him, it's not even funny, which is good and bad. But I respect him for his toughness, his competitiveness, his athleticism, his ability to play through some injuries. I respect all that. But then again, he has not played even close to a pro style system. If I was drafting him, I'd say, listen, we got a chance to have, a pit bull type quarterback that is highly going to be respected from competitiveness, just overall toughness, and the fact that he's a damn good athlete. But it's going to take him a year or two just to understand how to be in a pro style system. So if you're expecting the bang for the buck early, you're not going to get it. And you're not going to run the system that he's used to, because you can't. Not in the NFL. He's going to get killed. But if you give him 2 to 3 years, you might have something, maybe not great, but good enough to chance to go to the playoffs, which is all you look for, from the get-go. But again, that's one of those things where I think he has kind of the it factor to a point, which makes him, in my opinion, kind of unique in this system or this year's draft. But again, he's not close to being ready to step on the field in the NFL, not even close. And again, if you're a head coach, knowing that you might be on the hot seat a little bit or not, are you going to take him? If you do, then you're going to probably have to play him early to prove that you're right to save your job, where you're trying to cover your ass as a head coach instead of letting the kid develop into being the player he can be. So he's forced to go faster than he should. And probably 3 out of 4 times, they're going to fail more than succeed. And can they bounce back from those failures and be better because of it? Or they can go in a shell and just maintain who they are and what they are, and forget about the techniques and forget about, the coach is saying, do this, this, and this. Well, I'm used to just being, playground football, where I get the ball, I make a play. I'm, like David Carr was trying to do. I get the ball, I'm running out of the pocket. That way it gives me more time to make a play. Well, say you're doing that, and the play that's called is you know, is a 5-step, 7-step drop. Well, the routes that are being ran, it's a timing mechanism. So all of a sudden, if you're not setting up in the pocket and you're running around, these routes are taking, you know, 3 to 4 seconds to set up instead of 1 to 2. Then it's just everything's thrown off. The timing, the routes, and all that stuff. And now you're hoping to make a play, you know. And all of a sudden, well, I'll run the ball if I can't find somebody open right away. Well, you're going to take shots, and you're going to get hurt, and you're going to be gone. You know, you're going to hopefully not get hurt bad, career ending, but you're going to be on the sideline more than on the field because of getting broken ribs or whatever, you know, getting a sprained MCL on the sideline when the guy hits you, you know. So, you know, I like Corral, and I think he's got a chance to be, you know, a good number 2 early on in his career with a chance to be a 1, maybe 3 years into it. But the thing that's good about him, a guy like him, is he's not going to be taken in the top 10 where the team's just suspect. If he's drafted, he's probably going to be taken 20 to 32, where it's a more solidified roster and the coach is in a more secure area. The head coach and the coaches around are in a secure area where they're not worried about getting fired this year because they won some games. They had a chance to be in the playoffs, or they were in the playoffs. Now you have a little, you know, leverage as a coach to say, listen, we like you. We took you in the first, you know, this pick for a reason, but you're not going to play early, just so you understand that. Okay. We're going to develop you into an NFL quarterback. And that's why you see a guy like, you know, like Mac Jones. He had success this year because, first of all, he went to a system and a head coach that's not going to put too much on his plate. They're going to let him do what he can do and emphasize the running game to take the pressure off the quarterback and let him make the plays when he can. And he had a definitely solid first year, you know, where all of a sudden you look at a Trevor Lawrence, you know, you look at you look at a Zach Wilson, all of a sudden they're like, wow, these guys bust already. And of course you can't say that, but they didn't have success or weren't on the field a lot or got hurt, you know, or whatever happened, you know, what went on. But, you know, everybody would say, well, the best quarterback taken this year, you know, was Wilson. I mean, was Jones, you know, because he had success, you know, playoffs and stuff like that. Well, you look at the talent level, it's not even close. I mean, you know, Max is what he is, and he's not going to be more upside. He's going to win. He's going to beat you mentally. You know, like we had a guy in Seattle my first time, Matt Hasselbeck. That's what he was. He wasn't physically gifted, but he was very intelligent, and he understood the game of football. He understood the Holmgren system, and he made the right reads and put the ball in the right place. We were able to run the ball with Sean Alexander. You know, he was the MVP of the league that one year. And them take so much pressure off the quarterback. But Holmgren knew what he had talent-wise compared to having Favre than having Hasselbeck. And they adjusted the system for each quarterback. And a lot of coaches nowadays, they don't want to adjust their system. It's my system. I'm going to run it my way. The players have to adjust to me. And the good quarterbacks, like a Belichick, he adjusted Jones. You know, McDaniels adjusted to Jones, and they put him in a situation to be successful. And that's what good coaches do. You know, and that's why they had success this year with them. You know, with Lawrence, they're like, well, you have to make the play, Trevor. You have to make these plays because if not, we're not going to win. Well, now he's thinking, shit, that's more pressure on me. I have to make this throw. I have to complete this 3rd and 8. Like I get this out right on them, you know, and it just adds up and they don't have success, which I think Trevor will be a really good quarterback when it's said and done, because I think he can adjust to his failures and learn from them and get better going forward. And that's any position, but especially quarterback. I mean, you just have to, each year you have to be learning why you made mistakes and understand what you have to do to become better in the off season, going into the season and preseason and all that stuff. And just know you're going to fail, but you're going to get better because of the failures. And that's what good quarterbacks do.
And just to finish, do you think that a quarterback will go in the top 10 this year, or are the 3 that you expect to go going to be in the same kind of range that you're talking about with Corral, 20 to 32?
Well, the funny thing is, honestly, my personal opinion, and I could be completely wrong, I have been before, is I don't think anybody's a top 10 quarterback, not even close. I think what will happen is when you get there, and depending on what happens with Watson going forward and with Matt Ryan and of course with Baker, you know, the quarterback situation is not done yet. These teams that need one, all it takes is the owner stepping in, and all of a sudden you're at pick 8 or pick 9, and all of a sudden you're hearing whispers that somebody's trying to trade up, and what are they trading up for? Well, they need a quarterback. All of a sudden they're like, shit, well, we got our highest rated guy. Why don't we just take him now because we need a quarterback? So the weaker GMs or the weaker, younger head coaches will give in right away. because that's the owner saying it. We have to prove to the fan base and to the world that we're taking a quarterback because we need one and he's going to be our savior. So, but what happens then is, say one does go in the top 10. Now that forces everybody's hand for number 2 and number 3 and number 4, whatever quarterback it is. They'll go earlier than they should because now the first one's off the board. Now you're in a deadpan because you only have 2 that you like. Now, say you're sitting at 12, or say you're sitting at 20, and say you're Pittsburgh, and you need a quarterback and a young quarterback to develop. Do you trade up to 12 and take the second quarterback that you have graded there, and panic? And that way you get a quarterback and everybody's happy, but then you're not getting a good football player. Whereas you look at the board and you got a defensive end, you got a corner, you got an offensive lineman, you got a running game, or whatever. There's a much better player who's going to help you year one automatically. He's going to come in and play well for you. But you force the issue because of the position, because it's a quarterback. And you got pressure on you to get a quarterback because the owner's saying, we need a quarterback. We have to have a quarterback for us to win. Everybody has the quarterback that wins the Super Bowl, and they panic. And I feel bad for the quarterbacks, and it's not their fault where they get drafted. They're getting drafted where the team drafts them. But they're expected, the higher they're drafted, the more expectations, especially early in their career. And a lot of guys can't do it. I mean, it's just such a different animal in the NFL compared to college. But again, it'd be interesting where the first one goes and see who moves around and who panics and who moves up to get a quarterback. And everybody's saying, even the team that takes them, like, well, we had him as our 35th rated player. We took him 15th because we had to have a quarterback. We had to have a quarterback coming out of this draft. And we think in 2 to 3 years, he has a chance to be a good quarterback, hopefully a good quarterback. But then all of a sudden you got to play him year one. And it's just like, wow, what did we do? I mean, we got 15 guys behind him that are all playing, say it's a receiver, say it's a running back, say it's a corner, a pass rusher. They're having hell of years. They could have really helped us. But we took this dang quarterback. Now, did we do the wrong thing? And at the time, it in your gut, you're trading up. I never did it. Thank goodness I didn't have to. But deep down inside, this guy ain't worth that pick. Son of a gun, look who's on the board. Look at that guy. He's going to come in day one and be a starter for us and help us win games. We're taking this quarterback. I mean, cross our fingers, he's good when it's all said and done, but he's not ready for a couple of years. It's just like, well, what do you do? It's just, but the good GMs, the Steelers, the teams like that who are consistent and don't take the flash, but take the good football player, the whole package, the toughness, the competitiveness, the athleticism, the leadership. And some people say, well, that's not a very good pick. And all of a sudden, 2-3 years down the line, they're going to playoffs every year. The guy's starting and making plays for you. Is he great? No, but he's damn good. Is he a perennial Pro Bowler? No, but you know what? We win games because of him. At any position, even kickers. You need those cats. They're out there any round 1 through 7. There'll be quarterbacks taken mid rounds this year. End up being Colt McCoys. That are never the starter, never going to take the promised land, but damn good quarterbacks can get you out of 3 or 4 games a year because the starter gets hurt, but people lose sight of that. They want the flash. The owners want the big name that the fans are going to be like, wow, that's a hell of a draft. We got a quarterback. We need a quarterback. And all of a sudden 2 years, they want the quarterback cut. They want the head coach fired. They want everybody gone, and start over. And it's just like, I don't get it, but that's the NFL, and it's a big business, and a lot of people are involved in a lot of money, and some people don't understand how it works, but they think they do, and they stay on the bottom.